In this tutorial, I'm going to add a digital delay effect to both of these audio tracks via busing and an auxiliary track. So first off, I need to create an aux track, project, add tracks, add aux track. An auxiliary track is just a play-through track. So if I send audio from these two tracks to this track, it will play through, and any effects I apply to the aux track will be applied to that audio. And I can control it independently of these tracks since the aux track has its own fader, panning, etc. So now I've created that, maybe I'll rename it. Next, I'll need to set up my busing or my sends and returns so that audio or a mirror image of the audio playing from these tracks will go to this auxiliary track. So I need to see the mixing board. And if the mixing board looks like this, you'll want to change the view so that you can see the routing section. So if I go to this arrow, I see that inserts and sends are not checked, so they're not showing. Let's start with the sends. Now I've got little output boxes for my audio tracks. So I want to send the signal from this track and this track into the input of this auxiliary track. So if I click on the sends, you notice there's a list of buses. That's the virtual cable we're going to connect. Now, bus is an okay name, but it'd be nice if it had a more obvious name, so when we choose it at both ends, it's easier to find. So, to do that, we go to Studio and Bundles. And if we click these tabs, one of them says Buses, so we can actually add a bus and give it a name. Something obvious like that might be good. Delay cable. And now when we go here, this is where we select our send output. We should see a bus called delay cable. So we can choose that. And we'll choose that for the input of this track. And the input is chosen down here. So I choose audio input, and there's a selector for delay cable. So we've just created a virtual connection from here to here. We can also have this track send to here. So I'll go here, choose delay cable. Now when I play this sequence, we should see the signal here and also reflected here. We haven't put any effect on it, so we'll get an idea of the edits that I've done when I play it. We can see it in both places. I'm going to do a little loop here so we can play with some of the levels. Next to the sends, there's a little volume and panning knob that's going to dictate how much signal is sent over to the auxiliary track. There's also a mute button to disable the send and a pre and post fader button. In pre-fader mode, the signal is sent regardless of this level. It's sent at the same level. In post-fader mode, if I move this fader down, the send level will also decrease. So I'll leave it in pre-fader mode, and we'll play with the levels a little bit. Watch the levels change here. Now nothing is being sent to the auxiliary track. If I turn this level up, now we're seeing this track is sending there. Now both of these tracks are being sent there. As you can hear from that loop, I have a fairly simple rhythm going on. My idea is I'll use a digital delay plugin that has separate delays for each channel, and I'll link those to the metronome and we'll get a new groove out of it. So in order to do that part, I need to view the insert section. That's where we insert effects. Now I can see the insert section. I'm done with my send, so I'm going to hide that so we have a better view of the mixer. So for the delay, I'll choose the digital delay plugin. And most of the plugins operate in the same way. They're most of the time-based plugins operate in the same way. There'll be some section that you can choose tempo control, like here. There'll be input levels and output levels and ways that you can alter the effect, either filtering the sound or changing the pitch or whatever. There's also a mix section in most effects. This is, as it says, the mix of the dry signal versus the wet signal. Well, we have dry signal coming out of these tracks, so since we've plugged it into a separate track, we can actually turn the mix up to 100%. All we're interested in is the delayed signal. Now, right now, the tempo control of this plugin is set to real time. So it's actually reading the delay in milliseconds. So if I leave it, I'll just put some random milliseconds here on this default patch, and we'll let it run and see what it sounds like. And I'll bypass it here so we can hear it with it on. This is without the effect. Effects back in. Okay, so that's a pretty random delay, not quite what I was looking for. So I'm going to switch this to fit note values. Note values means it's doing a note value relative to the speed of the metronome. And let's start by mixing this up a little bit. Maybe I'll choose eighth note for this, which is every half of a beat, and dotted eighth note for this side. So one is the left channel, one's the right channel. The feedback will be the amount of delay, so let's give it a little bit more on the feedback. And I'll get to some of the other elements in a moment. Let's see what we have now. Okay, that's a little cooler. Now it's kind of in rhythm. Maybe if we turned it down. Okay, now we've got something happening. Okay, next let's look at this filter section. The filter is a frequency filter that either allows the low frequencies to pass, all the frequencies, notches out certain frequencies, or just the high frequencies to pass. And each feedback or echo is going to be filtered even more and more. It sort of creates a loop. So right now the low pass filter is on, but it's not activated. I'd have to click it. Okay, so I'm going to change this to high pass. So basically it's going to filter out low frequencies on each repeat. And let's see what we have now. And I'm going to change my sends here for a moment. I'm going to mute, let's mute one of them. So now we'll just hear the Kraftwerk loop go through the delay. And let's mute the track. Now notice as it's echoing, we're hearing higher and higher frequency versions. I'm going to turn up the feedbacks and you'll hear it even more obviously. See, it sounds like it's falling away into the distance. I'll bring down the frequency and it'll have less of a strong effect. Yeah, that's nice. So hear how it's filtering ever so gradually, getting higher and higher frequencies are pronounced as it delays. Okay, so let's give it a signal like this. It's got a good amount of delays there. Let's make them the same. And we'll unmute this and have it work on both tracks. Let's hear the difference. Turn this off. That's where we started, and with the effect on. So that makes it sound a little bit better. Well, what if we wanted this effect to turn on just at measure 14 and not add delay any earlier? We'd do that through automation, which I'll cover in the next tutorial.